It's time to tie up your hair, pet your familiar, and get ready to cook because today we are going to be making the Potage Magnifique from Skyrim. The first time I played Skyrim was winter break of 2011, and the food in that game. I've pretty much wanted to eat everything in Skyrim, but in particular I've been fascinated by the soup called the Potage Magnifique, which you first encounter on the Dark Brotherhood quest to kill the Emperor. And you have to pass yourself off as the chef named the Gourmet. But I really wanted that soup that the Gourmet was supposedly famous for, that everyone makes in a bunch of different ways. Now, a potage is a real-life dish. It's essentially just a soup made of blended vegetables, and you can really add in any kind of sort of combination of things that you want into it. But we are going to make it magnificent. One easy way to elevate any soup is to make your own stock or your own broth, and so we are going to do that. It sounds very difficult, but I promise you with a little bit of planning it is achievable. Now, according to the chef from Castle Dour, everyone makes the potage differently. So there are a few ingredients that you choose between in order to add into the soup. And a few are obviously not real, but they are based off of real things, or we can use real ingredients to make them sound similar. For one, obviously, diced pork or meat is not something that we could acquire, but we do have pork, which is very fatty and probably accomplishes the same flavor profile. We're also not going to add jarrin root, and we're not going to poison ourselves. Nern root doesn't really have a real life equivalent, but we can add in carrots, we can add in a splash of mead, so let's get to cooking. For the stock, we're going to need 2 pounds of bones, 6 ounces of onion, 3 ounces of leek, 3 ounces of carrot, a few sprigs of thyme and parsley, about a tablespoon of black peppercorns, and a few bay leaves, as well as about 8 hours. Now for stock, there are a few key steps that are going to ensure your success. For one, we're going to be using 2 pounds or 32 ounces of bones, which means we need to use 12 ounces of mirepoix or flavoring vegetables in the stock as well. For an authentically Elder Scrolls flavor, we are going to change up the mirepoix slightly, switching out the traditional celery for leek. For the vegetables, the ratio for mirepoix is traditionally a 2 to 1 to 1 ratio of onion to celery to carrot, and since we need 12 ounces, we're going to use 6 ounces of onion, 3 ounces of leek, and 3 ounces of carrots. While you don't need to make sure your mirepoix is incredibly small, the more evenly you can get your pieces chopped, the more evenly the flavor will be dispersed. When working with leeks, always make sure you split them down the middle and make sure you clean out any dirt that could be within. We aren't going to use the tops of the leeks for the base of the soup as they can get rather fibrous. So we're going to cut that off, we're going to use that for our stock, and we're going to save the white tender bits for the actual base of our soup. When I worked in a ramen shop, I learned how to make an extra rich and flavorful broth since we used a mixture of pork and chicken bones that we boiled tonkatsu ramen style. And so we will be doing that for this stock. Technically, it's a broth since it does contain meat. Normally, boiling stock is a signature no-no, but since we don't really care about the cloudiness, we really just care about the flavor here, we are going to go ahead and boil this. I was able to find some chicken necks and pork hocks for my bone mixture of choice, but you could use chicken feet, pork feet, really anything. Always make sure that the water covers up the bones, and let's get started because this is going to take about 8 hours. Add the bones to the pot, but wait on adding the herbs and the mirepoix until later on in the process. When the stock starts, there will be a time period where scum will start rising to the surface. We're going to skim that off and discard it. When there seems to be no scum left to skim, we're going to add in those herbs and those mirepoix since we now won't accidentally skim them off. Afterwards, the stock will need to be checked on periodically so that we can top off the water level if need be. After the stock is fully emulsified, we're going to strain it and set aside so we can tackle the bulk of the potage. For the base of the potage, we only have a few hints about what could possibly be in the soup that makes it so good, and the chef in Castle Dour even states that everyone makes the potage differently and asks for input from the player character about what could go in. Some of the suggestions are, if I'm being honest, a little ridiculous, but some can definitely be utilized to make a great soup. For our version of the potage, we're going to need 2 tablespoons of butter, a pound of mixed vegetables, a splash of mead or white wine, a few cloves of minced garlic, some thick cut bacon, and about half a cup of sour cream. We're also going to be adding in the shiitake mushrooms for flavor. Let's start by chopping up our chosen vegetables for the soup, which is a 1 pound mixture of potato, leek, and carrot. We don't want these pieces to be massive as they'll take too long to cook, but they also don't need to be perfectly cut as we will be blending this later. we're going to be sauteing the leek with 2 tablespoons of butter and doing what is called deglazing with a splash of mead per Gianna's, or rather your suggestion. One tip I have is to have a plate next to your station like I do here, so you can put any utensils that you're still using on them. Personally, whenever I bought a utensil rest, I've never used it, but a plate you can always just put down and then wash with your other dishes. This is a process where we get the bits of food stuck on the bottom to the pot into the soup base by taking a liquid of choice and using it to dissolve it. Then we're going to add in our vegetables and our homemade stock to cover them, allowing them to simmer until they are all fork tender. While diced horker meat is impossible to procure, it is possible to get some thick cut bacon and add that into the soup. Since we want this to be crispy, we're going to saute it at a medium-high heat in a separate pan and drain it onto some paper towel to add to the soup later. This can be done while the vegetables are simmering and set aside. After the vegetables are easily pierced with a fork, we're going to grab our hand blender and blend it until smooth. Now it's time to season with salt and add in our sour cream. I added in about a tablespoon of salt total. Now I really enjoyed this soup. I found it to be very hearty. I really love the addition of the leek in there. The shiitake really made it well more rounded and added a little bit of umami flavor to it. Even my husband, who's not a big soup person, did eat his entire bowl. Now if you want to continue learning how to cook, make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss the next video, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!
The Emperor has requested your signature dish, the Potage le Magnifique. I've taken the liberty of getting it started.